This is In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant. Tonight we'll look at how a new rule from the Trump administration could turn life upside down for international students in the US. And we'll jump into the race for president, taking a look at whether Joe Biden can hold his current lead. But first, we're starting off with some news you might not want to hear, but you really can't get away from it. 31 states are seeing a rise in new coronavirus cases. But if you thought that meant we're entering a second wave, Dr. Fauci wants to set the record straight.
We are still knee-deep in the first wave of this. We went up, never came down to baseline, and now we're surging back up. So it's a serious situation that we have to address immediately.
Across many states, reopening is no longer the priority. In California, the governor ordered a second round of shutdowns Monday. It's a similar scene in parts of Florida, as Miami-Dade County, the state's second largest county, prepares to shut down restaurants, gyms, and Airbnb rentals. Again. It's a social media app that's gained even more popularity during the pandemic, but now Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says the US is seriously considering banning TikTok and other Chinese social media apps.
With respect to Chinese apps on people's cell phones, I can assure you the United States will get this one right too, Laura. I don't want to get out in front of the president, but it's something we're looking at.
The app, known for addictive looped videos, seems harmless enough, but the US government's concern is what's being done with the information collected on TikTok's users. Although it's a Chinese company, TikTok has said data from US users is stored in the US with a backup in Singapore. We're getting a glimpse at how the upcoming school year might look, and it really depends on where you live. Despite Florida becoming a new hotspot for COVID-19 cases, the state will require all schools to open next month. The emergency order asks all districts to submit a reopening plan to the state. Meanwhile, for many college students across the country, the fall semester will look a lot different, but the price likely won't. This week, Harvard announced it will welcome back no more than 40% of its undergrad classes and conduct all classes online with no discount on tuition. Many schools, both public and private, are following that same model, but some are providing small discounts to online-only students. The push to limit the number of students on campus might be the safest option as the pandemic carries on. But with the new rule announced by US immigration officials, it could also turn life upside down for international students here. Ben Shamiso has more.
Thousands of students across the US are facing an uncertain future after ICE announced international students must leave the country if their universities move entirely online in the fall.
It's such a hard process to get a visa. It's just a long plan. And it's so much money involved and it's so bureaucratic, and then you get here and then they're like, oh, we're gonna kick you out.
I'll be leaving a girl that I'm currently seeing, which sounds trivial, but it comes to your brain. And again, friends and just a social circle and a life that I've cultivated here.
Under the new rules, foreign students will have to depart the US unless part of their course load is taken in person. If that's not possible, ICE says they can try to transfer to other colleges. For now, international students are scrambling to figure out what to do next.
I don't know what the situation's like in Malaysia. I don't know if I'll be able to study from home because of time zones.
It's kind of scary too, because of course Brazil is my home, but at the same time it's not that things are not doing good there.
Universities have until August 1st to notify the government if they'll restart some or all classes in person.
I'm just waiting for some sort of announcement, some sort of reassurance that, hey, you guys are okay.
I have a little hope they're going to try to do something about it, even if, they create some classes for us.
The new guideline comes amid a debate among colleges about how to safely reopen in the fall now that the coronavirus is gaining steam among young adults in the US. The American Council on Education, which represents university presidents, says the new rule is horrifying and provides confusion and complexity rather than certainty and clarity.
This regulation is going to prevent many students from coming to the United States and getting to experience education in the United States and contribute to this country. But it's also going to pressure a lot of colleges and universities to open up to in-person classes far sooner than might be wise for public health concerns.
Last year, colleges in the US attracted 1.1 million international students. Losing some of those students could be financially disastrous for universities. Many depend on the tuition revenue of foreign students who typically pay higher rates than American students.
It's not cheap, especially if you come from a country that has a worse off currency.
Before the pandemic, international students had to take most of their course load in person. But ICE created an exemption in the spring after the virus forced campuses to close. On Monday, ICE decided it was time to mostly get rid of that exemption and resume carefully balanced protections against visa fraud. The agency has notified schools and says it will soon publish a formal rule. Ben Chamisso, Newsy, Chicago.
I gotta go water a few of my colleagues' plants and throw out the dead ones. With dignity. We'll be right back.
There's 3 American girls competing for the top 2 Olympic spots.
I could go into this and come out with nothing.
At Newsy, we're focused on facts and solutions.
Talking with medical workers on the front lines, decision makers, and everyday people.
All of us fighting COVID-19.
Newsy, be informed, not influenced.
Some days we wade into the trending topics thinking, these are kind of dumb, but not today. We might mess around and learn something during this next round. Here's what's trending. No, this isn't a joke about having a few too many, and it's also not a sequel to that social media blackout trend from a few weeks ago. No, this Blackout Tuesday is an effort to get Black Americans to only buy from Black-owned companies or abstain from spending money. The whole goal is to push for social and economic justice by leveraging the $1 trillion worth of buying power within the Black community. This sort of economic disruption or boycott has some historical significance too. The Montgomery bus boycott in 1955 and 56 was successful because Black riders refused to ride until they could sit where they wanted. Deutsche Bank is trending today after the bank was forced to give up $150 million over their relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, the former financier and convicted sex offender. New York State hit the German bank with a fine for not monitoring all the red flags coming up in Epstein's account activity. And both Pusha T and Drake are trending today over new drama in a years-long feud, which makes this a great opportunity to give a little rap beef history lesson. Basically, Pusha T and Drake are 2 of the biggest rappers in the world, and they just hate each other. Things got really out of hand in 2018 in one of the most infamous diss tracks of all time, when Pusha revealed Drake had a secret child.
Adonis is your son, and he deserves more than an Adidas press run. That's real.
These 2 trending now in 2020 might be an indication that this is a rivalry with no end in sight. If it seems like Joe Biden is kind of running a low-key campaign, well, he is. But whatever he's doing seems to be working pretty well for him, considering the sizable lead Biden's got over the president in polls both nationally and in key states. It's a lead far beyond what Hillary Clinton had last time around, but the question now is, will it hold? Newsy's Alex Miller has more.
The presidential conventions, in whatever form they inevitably take, are less than 2 months away. And right now, presumptive Democratic nominee Joe Biden is sitting in a pretty comfortable position. A recent Monmouth University poll has Biden leading Trump 53-41. But as Democrats learned the hard way in 2016, leading a national poll won't win you an election. For now, state polls look promising for the campaign too, showing Biden with a lead in nearly every swing state. Let's zoom in a little. That Midwest wall that tipped the election to President Donald Trump 4 years ago looks to be moving in Biden's favor.
You have to look at some of the external factors, being COVID, the shape of the economy, and the overall tone and tenor that President Trump has displayed.
It all comes as the former vice president keeps a mostly low profile, limiting himself to just a few fundraising events per week and utilizing his wide range of surrogates, including former rivals like Senator Elizabeth Warren. Much of the campaign's focus is now on President Trump's response to coronavirus.
But make no mistake, we're still in a deep, deep job hole because Donald Trump has so badly bungled the response to coronavirus and now has basically given up on responding at all.
While doing limited public events, the Biden campaign has been focused on fundraising, raking in more than the Trump campaign 2 months in a row, beating them by $10 million in June and by nearly $20 million in the quarter overall. This war chest is allowing the campaign to expand quickly. Biden made multiple hires in both Pennsylvania and Florida this week. Still, the president's campaign reported a remarkable $295 million in cash on hand. But whether the campaign is making the right calculation by keeping Biden home as Trump continues public outdoor rallies still remains to be seen.
Trump is his own worst enemy. And I think that one of the things that the Biden campaign has been very good about is not getting in the way of Trump and letting him not only destroy his own campaign, but the trickle-down effect that you're seeing with Senate Republicans.
Outside of Washington, Alex Miller, Newsy.
I've heard from a few of you, but I need more feedback to fuel this show. Hit me up here so we can keep this motor running.
We're working remotely, but our mission hasn't changed.
Newsy's here for you.
Newsy is here for you from our living rooms and our kitchens.
24/7. Focused on facts and not hype.
Be informed,
not influenced.
During this presidential cycle, some candidates have benefited from small dollar contributions from donors giving up as little as $1. But candidates aren't the only ones benefiting from repeat small dollar donations. The middlemen in all of this are too. In this next Newsy analysis, we take a look at how this small donor revolution has also padded the pockets of credit card processing companies.
Donating to your favorite political candidate online is easy. It can take just one click, or if you set up recurring donations, you don't have to do anything at all. The internet has revolutionized how donors behave. People now give more frequently and in smaller amounts than ever before.
If you want to be part of getting me on the debate stage, just go to yang2020.com and donate $1.
But every time you donate online, there's a processing cost. And while it might be pennies on the dollar, those pennies add up. And in recent years, as small dollar donations have ramped up, credit card processing costs have exploded. Jonathan Zucker is the former CEO of Democratic payment processor ActBlue. He's watched this whole transformation unfold.
He is about 8 years old. What it really boils down to is it's just easier to make a small dollar donation than it used to be. The reality is no one would make out 100 $5 checks and give them to 100 candidates. But you can absolutely do that with online giving. On the one hand, large numbers of small dollar donors investing in the political process is very good for democracy. On the other hand, they are also good for the credit card processors.
Between 2008 and 2016, the amount that federal campaigns reported spending on credit card processing fees roughly doubled, going from $28 million to $52 million. 2020 campaigns have already racked up millions in fees, and they're on track to surpass any previous election cycle. Since 2008, more than $200 million has gone towards credit card processing fees. Of course, political fundraising overall has been on the rise, but more and more of every dollar donated has been going to credit card processing fees instead of to the candidate.
The reality of card processing is that the smaller the transaction amount, the larger the percentage of that transaction that disappears into fixed fees. Using an average commercial processing rate of 3% and 30 cents a transaction, the charges on a single $100 donation would be $3.30. But if you broke that into $101 donations, your total fees would be $33. It's important that people realize that the more transactions they engage in, the more credit card companies are making money.
Every time you donate online, there's a complex series of potential charges, like interchange fees, discount fees, and gateway fees. While you may never see these fees broken out, they end up going to a lot of different companies. There's the bank that issued the donor's credit card, there's the candidate's bank, the credit card companies, they also take a cut, and then there are other middlemen, some of which you've never even heard of. These processing fees are generally charged as a percentage plus a fixed amount. Stripe, for example, advertises a rate of 2.9% plus 30 cents a transaction. ActBlue, on the other hand, lumps all of its costs into a flat rate of 3.95%. That includes per transaction fees, which Zucker says are nearly impossible to escape.
So regardless of how fees are presented to donors and to campaigns, there are always going to be per transaction costs involved.
So would knowing all this actually have an effect on donors? Apparently, yes. Newsy and Ipsos did a survey for this report, and we found that nearly half of donors didn't know about the processing fees taken out of their donation. When told about how these fees affect small donations, many donors said they would change the way they donate to reduce fees.
If your goal is to reduce the amount of money that you're paying, credit card companies with your donations, then you want to limit the number of donations you make. To the extent that you can, based on your own finances and your own position, reduce the number of transactions to get the exact same amount of your money to campaigns, the more those campaigns are going to have at the end of the day.
When we're back, we'll talk about what some institutions are doing to move from under the shadow of the Confederacy.
Every patient was a dollar sign. It wasn't about how well was the treatment done. It was about how much did you make on that treatment.
On a personal basis, I've watched them drilling perfectly healthy teeth.
I do not think I was an aggressive dentist.
Losing your perfectly healthy teeth. How dare you try to do that to me?
We're not really sure that Wall Street is the best place to make medical decisions for us.
Nothing's wrong with making money. If you're doing it ethically, absolutely not.
There are references to the Confederacy just about everywhere you look. Statues, monuments, plaques, streets, etc. But in the wake of protests for racial justice, many schools named after Confederate leaders are looking for a name change. Newsy's Amy Morona has the story.
As America faces a reckoning on race, more people are pushing to rename school buildings honoring members of the Confederacy.
When we have institutions, not just schools, that are named after Confederate leaders, that are named after those who perpetuated racism and lynching and hate, that exacerbates the feelings of race in our schools.
A tally from Education Week found as of June of this year, at least 193 schools in 18 states are named after Confederate leaders. The bulk of those buildings are in the South, and the vast majority are named after Confederate General Robert E. Lee. Other popular namesakes include General Stonewall Jackson, Sidney Lanier, and Confederate President Jefferson Davis. Historians say buildings and statues honoring these men and their peers began popping up around 1890, years after they lost the Civil War.
And this idea that somehow these statues and these Confederate leaders represented Southern history and heritage became ingrained in Southern popular culture, indeed in national popular culture. It is not until the Second World War, when the Nazis made racism unfashionable, that people started looking at some of these names and looking at what these Confederates stood for.
Some schools were renamed after the 2015 shooting at the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in South Carolina, and the 2017 white nationalist rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, that left one woman dead. But states like Alabama have laws on the books that limit renaming buildings or moving monuments.
The idea that somehow renaming something or getting rid of a statue erases history is probably not the best argument. Everyone remembers Hitler. There's no statue of him in Germany.
In 2018, officials at a Virginia middle school reportedly estimated it would cost roughly $170,000 to rename it, but some experts dispute its costliness.
Well, you have to change the stationery, you have to change the website, and you probably have to change the marquee in front of the school. In terms of a school district budget, it would be relatively minor.
For some, a name is interwoven with a school's identity. Monique Bryant is a graduate of Michigan's Cass Technical High School, named after slave owner and state governor Lewis Cass. She told our sister station WXYZ that she wants the name to stay.
A lot of the focus has been on Mr. Lewis being a slave owner. However, many miss the opportunity to see that he was a teacher and he was thinking ahead. Cass Tech was built to educate students.
District leaders in Charlotte, North Carolina, recently moved to begin the process to rename Zebulon B. Vance High School. A committee will poll the community to ask for suggestions for new names to replace its current one, which is named after a Confederate general and former governor of the state.
It was something we had noticed and kind of talked about a couple of years earlier, but weren't sure at that time if it was the time to take this on. Right now, it feels like this is the time. This is the time to do this. There's momentum for this. People are ready for this. And so we're doing it.
Amy Morona, Newsy, Washington.
We've spent some time on the show talking about how some states have backtracked on loosening coronavirus restrictions, but in many states, restaurants are open for some level of partial service, which can still put patrons and employees at risk. For this installment of What's the Risk, Lindsay Thies fields a very topical question.
When it comes to getting sick with COVID-19, you might be thinking about this, and we have too. Vanessa asked,
what is the risk being a restaurant worker if you have a prior history of the H1N1 flu, SARS, and a compromised immune system due to childhood cancer?
We asked the experts. Their take, the risk of contracting COVID-19 as a restaurant worker with underlying health conditions is high.
If you do have a medical condition that puts you at risk, certainly you need to talk to your physician about that. You know, what does that mean? How does that affect your job and what kind of precautions you take? I think there's too many variations in that for me just to give a general answer, aside from checking with your physician. I think from a worker's perspective to be aware of is really, what's going on back in the kitchen or in the break areas. When we are seeing employees get sick, it's not necessarily that they're catching it from the customers in this case, but usually it is staff infecting one another. And oftentimes it's meal times for them or break times where they're in a break room and they don't have masks on. So really being cautious at those times where we're not having overcrowding in those situations is important.
If you're working there day in, day out, and you're seeing more and more people, the more people that you come in contact with, the more risk you have. Again, you can certainly help yourself by wearing your mask, by making sure you continuously use good hand hygiene, washing your hands. One of the best things that you can do to prevent this virus, as well as every other virus that we will be seeing in the upcoming months. Again, good airflow in the restaurant. Or definitely if you're working on the patio, that's also a very good thing that you can use to help minimize your risk.
Anytime you are in a situation where you're around a lot of people, the risk is higher. It's just very important that you're wearing a mask, and to the extent that masks are required for the people that would be in the restaurant, they should also be wearing them to try to lower the risk as much as possible.
If you have a question about your risk, email us a video question to what'stherisk@newsy.com.
That's it for us, folks. You've made it through another episode of In the Loop. Special thanks to everyone tuning in who isn't my mom and dad. Y'all, too, are MVPs. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, but don't dip just yet. More top stories from Newsy are headed your way now.